Today I'm going to react to a video by somebody called Hadi Rahim, and the video is called Charlie Kirk is a Racist. And before I watch it, and I've watched the first couple of minutes of it, and then I thought I'd try to watch it all the way through, like without knowing what's coming up. But before I watch it, I just want to explain that I don't know Hadi Rahim at all. I've never even heard of him, and other than this video obviously, and I know very little about Charlie Kirk beyond a few clips of debates that I've seen him in on YouTube. I mean, I know him better through South Park than anything else, so I go into this pretty blind. But I just want to see if Charlie Kirk is a racist, if this man has got a point, because nowadays this is a term that's being used to shut people up, just calling them names, like a racist, for having an opinion that differs to their own. So I want to investigate if Charlie Kirk is racist based on the evidence that Hadi Rahim presents, and he might be. I don't know, I mean, he might be.
Charlie Kirk is a racist and an idiot, and one of the largest voices on the right. His fame is a relatively new thing. He went from being known only by online political junkies like myself in the late 2010s.
I live like a capitalist every single day, Shank. I live as a capitalist, okay? I live what I believe. No. What do I do? I get charity every single year. Hold on. What's my salary? Less than his.
Charlie, take a seat.
Come on, Shank, let's go.
Charlie,
What are you doing?
take a seat. Take a seat.
Psycho?
To being known by basically every single teenager in America with a TikTok account.
A fetus is in utero.
What does fetus mean in Latin?
What the I'm sorry, is this
It means little human being.
He even does the thing that Ben Shapiro does where he debates random college students.
So you're comparing abortion to the Holocaust?
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse.
He went to my college last year where I debated him and won. How do I know this? I didn't get clipped.
Now, he might have beat Charlie Kirk in a debate, I really don't know, but Charlie Kirk might not have chosen that clip for the debate for his YouTube channel because the debate may have been boring or something, or not worth putting on his channel, or for a multitude of reasons. I don't know what the answer is to that either. But realistically, I do believe Charlie Kirk, if he's going to put debates on, he should probably put the whole thing on, in every debate, and then people can't say that he's cherry picking the debates that he puts on. But I don't know if he cherry picks them or not. Like, I mean, obviously I don't watch enough of him to really know.
Now, over the past few weeks, Charlie's been going on racist tirades online over Muslims in the United States. Actually, Islamophobia isn't racism. It is though. People who look vaguely Arab or brown get profiled as Muslims all the time. Sikhs get hate crimed because people think that they're Muslims because they're brown, wear turbans, and have beards. Charlie literally did this himself on Twitter when he mistook the mayor of Calgary for being Muslim when she was Sikh because she was brown.
So I don't think he's necessarily racist for believing that Islam is not compatible with Western society, because he might have his reasons for believing that to be the case. And I think if you investigate Sharia law, I don't think there's any doubt that that's definitely not compatible with Western society. So far I don't think he's proved himself to be racist. And when it comes to actually mistaking a Sikh woman to be a Muslim, I mean, that's a strange mistake to make. He should know better, and if he doesn't know what she is, then he should actually research it before he starts saying anything on Twitter. But again, I wouldn't say it's necessarily racist. It's a form of it's ignorance, and it's maybe a blind spot or something, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's full-blown racist so far. I'd say it's probably ignorant, but that's a bit different to being racist, because ignorance is sometimes caused through a lack of knowledge, and you can't say people that have got a lack of knowledge are necessarily racist.
So yeah, there is absolutely a racial component. But even if he wasn't racist and just Islamophobic, Islamophobia is still bigotry. So how is Charlie Kirk Islamophobic? That's what we'll be finding out on today's episode of Progressive Primers. First, take a look at his commentary about New York City mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani. Mamdani, who is a self-described democratic socialist, surprised even progressives when he not only won the New York mayoral Democratic primary, but won it by 12 points. Mamdani is also incredibly based, so naturally Charlie Kirk would have a problem with him, although the way he criticized him was interesting. He tweeted, "New York City is likely to elect a Muslim socialist as mayor. This is quickly becoming one of the biggest threats to our country. Pay attention." Interesting that Charlie thought it was important to highlight that he was Muslim. He could have just called him a socialist and his audience would have already had a reason to dislike him. Can you imagine if Kirk called someone a black socialist? How about a Jewish socialist?
So the commentator on this video is obviously claiming that Charlie Kirk is racist. And he's racist because he mentions the fact that this man is Muslim on posts. And so far, I don't really necessarily think that what Charlie Kirk is doing is necessarily racist, because Islam isn't actually a race. Like when he compares it to black people and Jews, black people are a race, and Jews, I know it's considered to be a religion, but originally it was a race. It was the 12 tribes of Israel, so it's a little bit different. It's not actually racist to not like Islam, because Islam is based on the beliefs of a so-called prophet from the 7th century. So, do we have to like and respect what this man from the 7th century has written down? I mean, not necessarily. Why does he? I mean, a lot of these people that are outraged by his lack of respect towards Islam wouldn't be outraged at all if his lack of respect was directed towards Christianity. That's what gets me about it. And so in my opinion, you should treat them both equally. You can either criticise everything or you can criticise nothing when it comes to religion, and in my opinion, the only option is you have to be able to criticise everything. So I don't believe so far that Charlie Kirk is necessarily being racist. He also described him as bigoted. If you are going to describe Charlie Kirk as racist and bigoted based on these tweets and what he said so far, then surely you have to say that Islam is also racist and bigoted based on what is written inside the Quran.
He would have been cancelled even by the right. After Mamdani won the primary, Charlie tweeted this: 24 years ago, a group of Muslims killed 2,753 people on 9/11. Now a Muslim socialist is on pace to run New York City. Now, obviously, this is an absurdly Islamophobic thing to say.
Charlie Kirk probably went a little bit far with that, to be honest. There's probably no need for him to say that, because you can't say that everybody who's Muslim is going to be a potential terrorist or something like that. So I don't agree with Charlie Kirk's connecting the voted mayor of New York to the people that took the towers down, that flew the planes into the towers. I think that's probably, that is very extreme from Charlie Kirk, to be honest, because you can't put everybody in the same boat based on religion, but you can acknowledge that religion has got some controversial verses within the book that the religion is based on. And so has the Bible, and I'm a Christian, and the Bible's also got controversial verses. But the differences between the controversial verses and the violent verses in the Bible is they tend to be parts of stories, whereas some of the verses in the Quran, sound like they're actually instructions by the person who's writing the Quran to commit violence against people that don't accept Islam. And that's why in a lot of Islamic states you've got Sharia law that enforces the beliefs of the Quran onto the citizens of whatever country is to different degrees based on different interpretations. But usually with violence and force and fear.
Zoran Mamdani is not a terrorist or even remotely has the same worldview as Al-Qaeda, and this tweet got a lot of pushback. Jessica Tarlov, the liberal panelist of Fox News' The Five, tweeted this in response. "Charlie, this is so gross and Islamophobic. Take it down." Charlie responded, "Debate me on the merits. Don't just throw out petty, thought-terminating cliches. This isn't 2015. That doesn't work anymore. What Muslim country do you prefer to live in, Jessica? What Western city or country has improved as the Muslim population has increased? America's largest city was attacked by radical Islam 24 years ago. And now, a similar form of that pernicious force is poised to capture City Hall. Be courageous enough as a liberal to call it out. I know deep down you are worried about what he will do. You were just too afraid to say it." Jessica responded, "I'm not afraid to say that I don't think Mamdani's vision for the city is a good one, and I think a lot of his policies are crazy. New York City is the home of capitalism, not socialism. I want more police funding, not to defund. BDS is repellent. We can't freeze rent, make everything free, but none of that has to do with him being Muslim." Charlie responded, "So the guy that's about to be NYC's next mayor wants to boycott and sanction Israel. First ever major candidate to say so, but that has totally nothing at all to do with him being Muslim? You know it does. You are just terrified about the social cost of saying it publicly. It's okay, I'll do it for you." Jessica then finished with, "Have you seen all the white Christian and Jewish hipsters from Brooklyn that support BDS? It's not that he's Muslim, it's that he's wrong." Okay, so a lot to unpack there.
So wanting to boycott Israel doesn't necessarily indicate that he's definitely Muslim and he's definitely, basing his policies on being Muslim, because there's plenty of non-Muslims are against Israel's, heavy-handed attacks on the Palestinians. And there's a lot of people out there that do see the Palestinians as legitimate victims, despite the religion, because I've always believed that we should never be involved in foreign wars like this, and we shouldn't be, and nobody should, including the United States and the United Kingdom, shouldn't be giving weapons for Israel to use on Palestinian people. I mean, I think that's something that we should completely stay out of, to be honest. But so I do agree in some sense that Israel's actions are as bad and as violent as the actions of anybody at the moment. But I don't fully understand 100% the whole situation there. Obviously, I don't live in Palestine and Israel, so I don't know what it's like being a Jew or being a Muslim in either instance. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, obviously tensions are very high, and both feel like they've got arguments that they are the people that should be there. So it is a tough situation, and it's a complex situation that dates back literally thousands of years.
First off, Jessica, we can't freeze the rent? What do you mean we can't freeze the rent? New York City has froze the rent a bunch of times within the last 10 years. They literally have a board that is dedicated to freezing the rent. It's not about can we do it, it's about if we should do it. Also, make everything free? Yeah, like free at the point of service, not literally make everything free. Zoran has literally gone line by line and explained how he's gonna pay for everything, but whatever. It seems that Charlie thinks that Zoran's ideology is in, quote, similar form to Al-Qaeda, which is absurd. Zoran Mamdani is one of the most progressive politicians in the country. No person who says that they're for queer liberation is a radical Islamic fundamentalist. You're just being racist. And again, there is a racial component. If Zoran was a white Muslim, the attacks wouldn't be nearly as vile. Charlie also implies that Muslim immigration is ruining America's cities? How? He provides no evidence, so I did some digging. A few weeks ago, he tweeted out this. "This is New York. We are being conquered and they are rubbing it in our face. Islam is steadily enveloping the West." Then there's a video of a TikTok that shows Shia Muslims celebrating Ashura in New York. The TikTok adds intimidating music to scare the viewer. But then the music stops playing. Wow. So scary. Look at all those brown people, Muslims, dressed in black, casually walking the streets of New York and holding up a banner. So scary. Look at that guy. Look, that guy's drinking. He's drinking something. What is he drinking? That could be a threat. This is definitely enveloping the West. It's hilarious to think that this is scary. It looks no different from Chinese New Yorkers celebrating Chinese New Year in public, or Irish New Yorkers celebrating St. Patrick's Day, or Jewish New Yorkers celebrating Yom Kippur. To say that this one is somehow uniquely scary above all others is Islamophobia. And Muslim immigration isn't ruining America's cities. Strict zoning policies and NIMBYism are ruining America's cities by artificially restricting the housing supply and making them unaffordable places to live. New York City, like America in general, is a melting pot that has had waves of immigrants come from all different parts of the world, and it's made America better. But for some reason, Charlie thinks Islam and Muslims are uniquely incompatible with the West. Why is this? What are Charlie Kirk's problems with Islam?
For anyone that has eyes to see and ears to hear and actually reads the Hadith and reads parts of the Quran, you know that conquest is an Islamic value. Islam has conquest values. They seek to take over land and territory.
Yes, because Christian countries definitely do not have a history of conquest. Absolutely no Christian majority society has ever done conquest in the name of God. But Hadi, these aren't recent examples. Islam wants to conquer the West in the modern day. So true. So let's look at the modern day. Since World War II, Afghanistan has invaded 0 countries. Algeria has invaded 0 countries. Bangladesh has invaded 0 countries. Egypt, 2. Iran, 0. Iraq, 3. Jordan, 1. Lebanon, 1. Malaysia, 0. Morocco, 0. Oman, 0. Pakistan, 1. Saudi Arabia, 1. Somalia, 1. Syria, 3. Tunisia, 0. Turkey, 1. Yemen, 1. Meanwhile, the peaceful West with the United States has only invaded 8 countries. And if that number seems low, keep in mind that I'm using a very strict definition of the word invasion. This list doesn't even include Korea, Vietnam, Syria, or the Dominican Republic, which, while technically not invasions, were offensive conflicts with American boots on the ground. But no, it's definitely Islam that's rapidly taking over the West.
Europe is now a conquered.
So yeah, I agree with a lot of this. I agree that the American government have fought too many wars and a lot of the wars was totally unnecessary. I agree that they should have left Libya and Iraq and Syria. They should have left them alone. And they probably should have, it's proven now they should have left Afghanistan alone as well, because they haven't made any difference. They've just wasted a load of money and, a lot of young people's lives. So, in my opinion, you could argue that the American government are the most violent government in the world. But, and I argued that, and I have argued that in the past, and I still believe they are. Obviously, there is arguments against it. There's counter-arguments, like the fact that America being, the most powerful nation in the world was sometimes maybe defending somebody else or something like that. But in a lot of cases that wasn't the case. So you can't justify every single war they've done, because most of the wars was totally unnecessary, especially the wars after 9/11. I don't think any of them should have been fought. I've never fought any of them that should have been fought. And there is still videos on the internet that are made 15 years ago and stuff somewhere. And if you watch them, you'll see that I was saying that at the time. And I'll still say it now, despite the fact that I don't particularly like some of the teachings of the Quran and the Islamic leaders. Obviously the Quran instructs anybody that reads the Quran, is instructed to read the Bible as well. And the Quran clearly states that the Bible is the word of God as well. So Muslims, in a way, do line up with Christianity in some ways. There is a little bit of common ground between them, probably more common ground than there is between Islam and being woke. And I find it quite hard to trust anybody that is Islam and woke at the same time, because I think to myself, well, they're either, puppets and liars with some sort of ulterior motive that people are not seeing, or them absolute idiots, because them two things are undeniably incompatible. And I think that the vast majority of Muslim people would 100% agree with that comment.
Continent. It is not what it used to be. It's a husk of its former self, which is increasingly Mohammedan.
So true. I mean, look at this map of Iranian military bases in Europe. Oh wait, sorry, no, this is a map of US military bases in the Middle East. But Hadi, these wars weren't caused by religion. Really? During the Cold War, American propaganda played up the narrative that the struggle between capitalism and communism was also a struggle between the Christian West and the atheist Eastern Bloc. Or how about when General William Boykin gave a speech recounting his confrontation with the Muslim warlord in Somalia in the 90s and saying that he won because, quote, my God was bigger? Or how about when George Bush referred to the war on terror as a crusade?
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.
Or how about when George Bush said that he invaded Iraq because God told him to?
In the Islamic texts, they spend so much time about people who do not share their values. There are like direct calls in Islam of what to do for those that don't believe, and it's a very pernicious preoccupation.
This is true. The Quran does call for violence against non-believers. Like, look at Surah Al-Anfal, which says, remember, O Prophet, when your Lord revealed to the angels, I am with you, so make the believers stand firm. I will cast horror into the hearts of disbelievers, so strike their necks and strike their fingertips. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 191, says this about non-believers, kill them wherever you come upon them, and drive them out of the places from which they have driven you out, for persecution is far worse than killing. And do not fight them at the sacred mosque unless they attack you there. If they do so, then fight them. That is the reward of the disbelievers. And of course, most infamously, Surah Al-Janeen verse 37, which states, if a man or woman living among you in one of the towns Allah gives you is found doing evil in the eyes of Allah in violation of his covenant, and contrary to my command has worshipped other gods, bowing to them or to the sun or to the moons or the stars in the sky, and this has been brought to your attention, then you must investigate it thoroughly. If it is true, and it has been proved that this detestable thing has been done in Arabia, take that man or woman who has done this evil deed to your city gate and stone that person to death. Horrible stuff. Except that last quote was actually from Deuteronomy, chapter 17, verses 2 to 5. Instead of Allah, it says the Lord, and instead of Arabia, it says Israel. Then, of course, there's 2 Chronicles chapters 15, verse 12, which states, and they entered into the covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, with all their heart and with all their soul, but that whoever would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, should be put to death, whether young or old, man or woman. It seems that both the Bible and the Quran have called for violence against and the murder of non-believers.
I'm glad he showed you them verses from both the Quran and the Bible, and I'm glad, that he didn't try to hide anything that is written within the Quran or try to say that it's fully justified. So I agree, fair play to him for that at the end of the day, because some people wouldn't even want to show you that. But when it comes to actually the difference between the two, I think the difference is context. The Bible isn't actually instructing violence on people. Now, Christians view the Bible, especially the Old Testament, as, a history book. That was what was told to them, the Jews at that time in that place, not what is being told to us. I think where Islam and Christianity differ on violence isn't the fact that there isn't no violence in the Bible, because there's lots of violence in the Bible, but it's all done within a historical context. There was violence in the Bible then, because there was violence in the world, and the Bible was telling you the stories of the world, and obviously the people then believed that God was commanding them to do these things. Now, if God is real or not is, beside the point really. I mean, you can believe in God and believe that God wasn't telling them to do these things and they wasn't speaking to God, and there is actually groups of Christians that believe that, and they're called Gnostics. They don't believe that God in the Old Testament is the same as God in the New Testament. They believe it was a lesser God and a corrupted God that was a gone wrong creation of an angel. So, within Christianity, there is actually, Christians that do dispute these verses of violence and God commanding violence in the Old Testament, and they claim it wasn't God claiming that. And, they do have some, interesting arguments. Obviously, the Gnostics was pretty much wiped out by the Catholic Church by around about the 5th century, and that, the Gnostic Christians, and they had a different viewpoint on what the Bible was actually saying. So the Bible can be interpreted in different ways as it is. There's a lot of religions that claim the Bible as a holy book that, most people don't consider to be forms of Christianity at all, like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons.
But Charlie downplays calls for violence in the Bible.
Christianity spends a fair amount of time on it, but nowhere near Islam, though.
But plays up calls for violence in the Quran. In May, while in England, Charlie Kirk went on the conservative GB News and talked about the decline of Christianity in the West. And he said some crazy things.
Can a civilization continue when it cuts off what gave it life? Probably not. And that's what modernity is flirting with right now. And so then you get all these counterfeit religions. You get environmentalism. Why do you guys think you guys are doing this insane net neutral carbon stuff by 2050?
Right, yeah.
So you get rid of Christianity and then you get a substitute form of earth worship.
Yes, because caring about the habitability of the planet we all live on is earth worship. I care about having a house, Charlie, but that doesn't mean I'm praying to Bob the Builder.
You get rid of Christianity and then you get a substitute form of anti-racism.
Okay, anti-racism is obviously not a religion. I don't know why Charlie would say such an idiotic thing.
You get rid of Christianity, and then, even more dangerous, you go from secularism then to Islam. Because then you're like, well, we have to believe in something, and then you bring in a completely different ideology that's at odds with Western values.
Charlie, people watching this now would say it's just Islamists who are the issue. Islam as a religion is peaceful by nature, so on and so on. What's your response to that?
I know a lot of great individual Muslims. My primary doctor in America is actually a Muslim, and he's amazing. That's not the point. You can walk the street and meet a great Muslim in London. The question is macro Islam compatible with Western values? Macro. Of course it's not. There are three major reasons why. Islam does not believe in freedom of speech. Islam does not believe in freedom of religion. And Islam does not believe in separation of mosque and state. Those three things are antithetical to the West.
Let's break these down one by one.
Islam does not believe in freedom of speech.
Well, while the Quran doesn't have a blanket verse either promoting or condemning free speech, neither does the Bible. Sure, the Quran says that lying is a sin and gossiping is a sin, but these are both sins in the Bible as well. So are you saying that the Bible is against Western values? Sure, many Muslim countries don't have freedom of speech, but that's not because of religion. It's because they have authoritarian governments that punish dissenters. That's politics, not religion.
Islam does not believe in freedom of religion.
Well, this point plays into one of Charlie Kirk's arguments as to why Palestinians shouldn't have a state. That Islam is a barbaric religion that can't tolerate others. In fact, a lot of his Islamic arguments seem to center around one thing: Israel.
Can you show me an example of Jews living peacefully under Islamic rule?
I can. The Fatimid Caliphate. which was generally religiously tolerant of Christians and Jews. There's also Al-Andalus, Muslim-ruled Spain, which was very tolerant of Jews. In fact, Al-Andalus became a hub for Jewish intellectuals, and many historians say that a golden age of Jewish culture in Spain took place under Muslim rule. The Ottoman Empire was also very tolerant of Jews during most of its history, in many cases way more tolerant than Europe. There's a lot more examples. In many Muslim societies throughout history, Jews were considered dhimmis, non-believers who were given special protection and tolerance in exchange for paying a tax. Jews have lived peacefully in many Muslim nations for thousands of years. It was really only until Muslim countries declined and faced hardships when Jews started to get scapegoated. But blaming minorities for social ills is very common in every society. Charlie Kirk is doing it right now. Anti-Semitism isn't just a Muslim problem, it's a human problem. Now, of course, the Quran doesn't actually believe in a true freedom of religion, but neither does any religion. Pretty much every major religion thinks that it's the correct religion, and that believing in others is heresy. So far, all of Charlie Kirk's arguments as to why Islam is incompatible to the West also apply to Christianity or any other religion.
So it went all the way back to the 8th century and the 1st century, and then I think it was the 15th century or the 16th century after, to find peaceful Islamic states, Islamic and Jewish states. But, you know, I'm looking past all that anyway, because I do think, you know, Sharia law is completely incompatible with the Western world. I think that's absolutely undeniable. And I do think that the Western world's laws have been undeniably based on the Western world's religions, and that would make perfect sense as it does in Islam as well, because obviously if you've got somebody in power that is a strong believer in Christianity or Islam or any religion, they're probably going to try to promote the rights or the expansion of the religion that they believe in. So it's not that unbelievable that politics and religion are completely connected, and the states, you know, the laws in Islamic states are a reflection of the religion in Islamic states, and the laws and the rights in the Western world are a reflection of the religions in the Western world, you know, traditional religions. I know people might say, well, we're not a Christian country anymore, or, you know, a lot of atheists might say things like that, but that's not really the point. The point is the country was based as a Christian country. It was a complete, you know, Christian country at one stage. You know, the King of England used to be called the Defender of the Faith, and King Charles is the first king to actually request the name to be changed to the Defender of all faiths, which straight away would mean that he's not doing a very good job of, you know, what he what he's described in his job, the Defender of the Faith. Because Britain's laws, obviously Americans' laws, even if they're not directly related like they are in Britain, because obviously the Church of England is a very powerful organisation in Britain, and even the Catholic Church has got, you know, millions of followers in Britain as well. So there is powerful organisations in Britain, and they have influenced governments and society in Britain, you know, for thousands of years. I mean, it's just an undeniable fact. Well, at least hundreds of years, you know, coming up to 1,000 years. I mean, that's just an undeniable fact, and that will be the same with Islam. So where we are in both cases is, you know, is where that religion and that thought process has got people.
But finally, Charlie Kirk says Islam is against the separation of church and state.
And Islam does not believe in separation of mosque and state.
Okay, but Charlie, you don't believe in separation of church and state either. Charlie Kirk used to straight up say that he doesn't believe in the separation between church and state.
Again, there is no separation of church and state. It's a fabrication, it's a fiction, it's not in the Constitution. It's made up by secular humanists. It's derived from a single letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Convention. Of course, we should have church and state mixed together. Our founding fathers believed in that. We can go through the details of that. They established literally a church in Congress. Anyway, separate issue.
Okay, so first of all, while the Constitution doesn't explicitly say there shall be a wall of separation between church and state, it basically all but does, because it does say, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Congress can't establish religion?
So I hate to say it, I agree with Charlie Kirk here, and I hope that doesn't make me racist, because I am trying to be as open-minded as possible, and I'd only watched like the first 90 seconds of the video before I made this, so this is the first I'm hearing of this, and I do give the video maker credit, like I say, for showing the violent verses within the Quran, because some people might try to talk the way around that without actually showing you the verses. But what I will say is, I think he's totally wrong on this, because I think what Charlie Kirk is trying to say is, it's the religion that determines the political state and the political mind of the country. And it's, that's why Christian countries are much more likely to tolerate freedom of speech and women's rights and, and all sorts of things, because, it's a Christian country, and tolerance is a big part of Christianity, and even tolerate people's right to practice any religion that they want. And I will always believe in that right, so I will never say that Muslims shouldn't be allowed to be, Muslims, because I believe in the freedom to any religion. But the trouble is, and I know that most Muslims aren't violent, because I've known loads of Muslims personally, and, and mainly they've been really nice people that I've known, so I ain't got nothing against Muslim people, but not liking what is written in a book that was written in the 7th century, I can't see how that actually makes you racist or intolerant, because it's just a book. I mean, you're not racist, you're not like racist because you don't like Harry Potter or anything like that, or the Bible. I mean, the thing is with this, is a lot of these people that are outraged by the criticism of Islam wouldn't be outraged at all if it was the Bible being criticised in the same way. They'd probably be supportive, and a lot of them have probably done it themselves, because the woke mob hates Christianity sometimes, or a lot of them do, and Islam isn't really compatible with being woke either, and anybody who thinks it is, they need to start looking and reading the Quran, or looking at the world and looking at Islamist states and Islamic states, and see how far wrong they actually are. Them two things are not compatible, and anybody who thinks that they are is either lying or is stupid.
Seems like separation of church and state to me. And also, just because Congress may have a church inside of it where individual politicians can go and worship, doesn't mean that the US government and US law is religious. Politicians can have their own religion, but government can still be secular. His point doesn't prove anything. Again, Charlie Kirk used to explicitly say separation of church and state isn't a real thing, but now he's more weaselly about it. He says stuff like, well, it depends on what you mean by separation of church and state. Do you believe that there should be a separation of morality and state? No. And where do we get morality from? The Bible.
Okay. More importantly, let's forget church and state. Okay. Can we both agree there's no separation between morality and state?
I agree.
Okay.
It's just lawmaking.
That's cool. That's where I really live in. What I'm saying, though, is the church should influence that morality. That's what I mean by that. Because at some point, people are going to have to make a decision of what is good and what is bad, what is permissible and not permissible. And I think the church or Christianity should inform those decisions.
Okay, but then the Quran is also a moral guide. Christians and Jews have the 10 Commandments. Muslims have Surah Al-Isra, which, among other things, bans murder, adultery, arrogance, tells people to honor their parents, the poor, and the stranger. Most religions have moral codes, Charlie. Why are you pretending that Christianity is the only one, or the only one that says good things, like murder is bad? So to recap, Charlie Kirk doesn't like Islam and Muslims. Why? Because they have a culture of conquest, even though Christian countries have had the largest empires in the world. Because they kill non-believers, even though the vast majority of Muslims and Christians are peaceful people, and even though the Bible also says to kill non-believers. Because they're against the freedom of speech. Not really. The Quran doesn't say much about the subject at all. Islam isn't against the freedom of speech. dictators and authoritarians are against the freedom of speech. It's because they're against the freedom of religion, even though plenty of Muslim societies throughout history have tolerated non-Muslims. And finally, because they don't believe in separation of mosque and state, even though Charlie Kirk himself doesn't believe that church and state should be separate. And that's a common trend that you'll see a lot from the far right. Every accusation about what they think Islam is actually a confession of what they truly believe. Let's do a comparison of the views of Charlie Kirk and radical Islam. Intolerance of LGBTQ people.
We must react politically. We must ban trans-affirming care the entire country. Donald Trump needs to run on this issue.
Check. Supports rigid patriarchy.
Hi Charlie, I'm Addie and I'm 14. I'm a freshman in high school, and I was wondering, as someone who has like a different opinion on college, what would you say the pros and cons are? Because I'm interested in political journalism.
Let me also speak to some of the young ladies here in high school where your top, who's here where your top priority is get married and have kids? Raise your hand. Okay. Interestingly, I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree. And no, seriously. And just be clear, that's why you're going to college, right? Don't lie to yourself, I'm studying sociology. No, you're not. We know why you're here. And that's okay, actually. And that's a really good reason to go to college, actually. If you think about it, I say college is a scam, but if you're going to find your life partner, that's actually a really good reason to go to college.
Check. Justifies war crimes.
How do you differentiate between an innocent civilian and a Hamas militant?
Yes, this is part of the tragedy of war that they did not invite, but Hamas did.
Check. Thinks that religion should be deeply involved in government.
Of course, we should have church and state mixed together.
Check. Thinks the influence of the opposing religion is a fundamental threat to society.
Large, dedicated Islamic areas are a threat to America.
Check. And finally, intolerance of non-believers. Well, that one's obvious. Check. Does this mean that Charlie Kirk is a radical Islamic terrorist who wants to bring Sharia law to the United States? No, he's just a far-right conservative. And a racist.
I hate to say it, I don't think, based on that Charlie Kirk is a racist. Because Islam isn't a race of people. It's a religion that's based on a 7th century book that was written by a man, a so-called prophet called Muhammad. And, so I don't see why it's so important that Christians respect that book. And I don't, as a Christian, demand anybody respect anything that I believe or anything that I read. I think that you should be allowed to make your own minds up without being forced or told what to think and how to think. And when people do think independently and freely, they're just dismissed as racists. I mean, it's not necessarily racist. I really do 100% disagree with most of what this video is saying. I don't think that most of this can be described as racism at all. And I'll put it like this anyway, if it is, then obviously Islamic State's a racist as well, because do you think that the reaction would be worse, better or the same if it was the opposite way around and it was a Western world, or people from the Western world, poor people mainly from the Western world, flooding into wealthy Islamic countries? And then, do you think that, obviously it wouldn't happen because the Islamic State wouldn't tolerate it as much as the Christian state, the traditional Christian state does. And that's, you could argue that the kindness of Christianity and the Christian state has led to this problem. And for the woke people who hate Christianity so much, but at the same time so willing to defend Islam, then these people amaze me. And obviously the person who's made this video doesn't understand Christianity at all, because he thinks that Old Testament laws apply to Christians. Obviously there are Old Testament laws that still do apply to Christians, but no, Christians believe in the teachings of Jesus and nothing to do with the Old Testament. They don't believe necessarily that the Old Testament is relevant today, especially like Leviticus and Deuteronomy and that, because they see it as an historical book. You know, that was what they was told then,